welcome to today's video. My name is Reagan and today we're going to be filming my December wrap-up. I read, I want to say 11 books in the month of December. We're going to be going through, I'm going to tell you my ratings, my thoughts, all of that stuff. I was debating doing this video because I did an every book I read in 2024 video, but I thought I want to have my thoughts drawn out and like spoken out loud for the month of December because I've done a wrap-up for almost every month on my channel forever, literally since middle school, so I would like to keep it going. We have 9 physical books and then 2 books I don't have with me, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started with these. Nikki Noel's Christmas Playlist is the first book I read in the month of December. I think I started it like November 27th and then finished it in somewhere in December. This is the first book in an interconnected standalone series. I read the second one last Christmas, didn't know it was a series, so I picked up the first one. This follows Nick and Noel, clearly as the title states. They are childhood best friends and Nick is newly back in town because he was in the army. Noel also used to be in the army, but she's kind of back. She's working, I think, as a nurse right now in their hometown, and they kind of reunite. Nick comes home and sees his longtime girlfriend, and he then finds out that she's cheating on him, so he breaks it off. And Noel and Nick have kind of always had this really good relationship, not romantic, but with them both being back in town, they kind of start to develop feelings and realize their attraction to each other, and they form a little relationship. It was okay. I rated it 3 stars. I knew going in that I wasn't going to love it because it's a Christmas book and like a lot of the time holiday reads aren't my favorite. I think one of my main problems about this book is the way that Noel was talked about as a character. I think it was one of those books where it's like, I'm different from other girls, when in fact she literally was just the same as other girls, and that's not a problem or a critique on her character. It's just like the men and the people in this world would describe Noel as different and unique from other girls when she would act just like everyone else, and I'm like, why do you want me to think that she's like quirky and unique when you're literally explaining her doing the same thing that every other woman in this book does? The not like other girls mentality was really what kind of kept me detached from the book, and I didn't really connect to the main characters. But reading the book on a like Christmassy scale, probably like an 8 or a 9 out of 10. It was very holiday themed. They had to like prepare for a holiday concert or something like that. So next I listened to a novella on Kindle Unlimited. It was like a free Kindle Unlimited novella, and it was Resting Scrooge Face by Megan Quinn. I think I rated this a 2 star. I literally could not tell you a single thing about this novella. I think that Megan Quinn's writing is very funny, it's fresh, but for this one I really just didn't feel it, didn't connect to it. The fact that it's a novella probably had something to do with it, but even this novella was quite quickly paced. It was kind of that same energy as Nick and Noel's Christmas Playlist, where they're both back in town. The main characters like had a relationship in the past or something like that. It's a second chance. Christmas vibes were probably like a 6 out of 10, but I really wouldn't recommend this novella out of all the novellas I've ever read. It was literally 3 hours long, less than 100 pages of an audiobook, but I listened to it on 2 times like I normally do, so it took me like an hour. I own this book physically, but I'm lending it out to someone, so I don't have it with me. But I read How My Neighbor Stole Christmas by Megan Quinn. This is probably one of my favorite holiday romance books I've ever read. It was a 4 star for me. The Grinch is one of my favorite Christmas movies ever, so a book that incorporated all of those aspects was really fun and unique, and I enjoyed it a lot. It follows Cole, who's like the Grinch, and then Story Taylor, who is Aunt Cindy or Cindy Lou Who's niece. Story Taylor is back in town, and her and Cole used to be friends as children, but then like they had a little falling out, and so now they're kind of enemies. In this town every year there's a Kringle competition, so it's basically like to find who is the most holly jolly of them all or whatever. Cole never competes, he's kind of a grump, he's the Grinch. But this year Story Taylor is competing for Aunt Cindy because Aunt Cindy's recently had a hip injury. But because Story Taylor is, and they have like a rivalry, Cole decides he's going to compete in the Kringle competition with his best friend Max, and he wants to beat Story, so it's like a rivals to lovers. I really enjoyed this whole thing. My one critique was it was a little bit long, which is why I docked a star, but other than that, loved it. I love how funny it is and how it picks on like things in The Grinch, the movie and the book. One of the things is always like everyone in town was telling Story. They all tell her like, I'm glad you grew into your nose, and she's like, what was wrong with my nose? But obviously like Who's from Whoville, the cute little noses and whatever. So it's just funny, and it picked on things from the Grinch story. It also had a narrator, which was really interesting, so it wasn't told in like 3rd person or anything. The narrator was like a character that would pop in every so often and interact with the characters as he was like telling the story, and there was little sections in the beginning of each chapter from a narrator perspective, and I really liked that as well. It was just a really well executed Christmas book, and I really am liking Megan Quinn as an author, so I'm glad I read it, and I will probably keep reading a bunch of her books in the new year. We can go back to my physical books. Those were the only two that I didn't have physically. Next, we have Thoroughly Punked by Lauren Blakely. This was unfortunately not a favorite of mine. I read this on a plane ride and it was not for me. I rated this a 1 star. It follows 2 men and 1 woman. The main character's name is Aubrey, and I did have to just check that really quick. Aubrey finds herself about to walk down the altar and her fiance breaks it off with her right before she's about to walk down and marry him, and honestly she's like, thank God, because she was having second thoughts. Him being the one to break it up because he was cheating was like a relief to her. Everything kind of goes wrong, and the fiance leaves Aubrey to tell everyone at the wedding that they're no longer getting married, and she's like, well, that was kind of shitty. And so her brother's 2 best friends end up taking her out of the wedding situation for her brother to deal with, and they escape and go on the honeymoon that Aubrey was supposed to go on with her fiance. It ends up being a kind of wide choose situation, and the issue I mainly had with this book is that in a wide choose, I feel like the characters you're choosing between need to be easily differentiated. Both of our main male characters had like personality traits and characteristics that set them apart. The writing and the thought processes and everything in the book, that how they were written out, didn't really change, so it was hard to tell whose POV you were in while you were reading. I probably should have DNF'd this book, but I like found myself at the 80% mark and just decided to push through because I had pretty much read the entire thing. I was really disappointed in this. It had everything that I like in a romance in the beginning, but somehow it just wasn't executed well for me, and I was disappointed by it. But I might give this author another shot. We'll see. Next, I read Christmas in Spite of You, and I read this mainly on the plane ride back from New York. I ended up rating this a 3.5 to a 4 star. I really enjoyed this one. Probably one of my favorite Christmas books, along with How My Neighbor Stole Christmas of the year. I need to look more into this author because there were so many quotes and moments that were so beautifully written, and I wanted to underline. I don't know if I even did underline them. I did. I underlined some of the moments because the writing in this was so gorgeous, and I think that means I really need to look more into this author. It is Casey Mills. If you've read anything else by them and recommend, please let me know. In the beginning of the book, I started out thinking that this was going to be a 4.5 to a 5 star read, which is kind of crazy for a Christmas book. But when we got to like the spice chapters, that's when my rating decreased. I think specifically I really enjoy spice in books, but the way that it was described, I think it needed more description in this book, because in the yearning sections and the build-up, it was very descriptive and graphic when pertaining to spicy scenes. But when we actually were in the spicy scenes, I feel like they were glazed over a lot of the time, and I kind of wish it was more in depth. This is quite obviously a very short book, so it's probably some conservation of space going into that, but I really wish they were just drawn out a little bit more, like a reward for a lot of that yearning that we went through. I think it was well paced for this short of a book, and I really didn't have many complaints other than that. The characters were so fun, so dynamic, and the writing was just gorgeous, and I think it really took me by surprise, but I'm glad I picked it up, and I would like to look into more of this author's books in the future. All right, moving on to one of my favorite reads of the month, we had Lights Out by Navessa Allen. This book, as well as Butcher and Blackbird, have really awoken in me the need for a dark romantic comedy every once in a while, and I've been looking up a lot of TikTok recommendation videos for dark romantic comedies after reading this book, because it's just like leaving a hole in my heart, I guess, that I need to fill. This book had me literally giggling and laughing out loud. Our female main character was a trauma nurse, and our male main character was a masked TikToker. The trauma nurse was named Allie, and she was obsessed with this masked TikToker, our main male character Josh. She like comments on all of his videos, has post notifications on, is so obsessed with him. The guy that she's currently hooking up with happens to be Josh's roommate. When that guy kind of breaks things off with Allie because of a text she sent about like this masked TikToker, Josh finds out that she is obsessed with him and ends up stalking her until he gets her, basically. I don't know if I explained that very well, but it is so addicting, and it had me laughing out loud. I stayed up so late to read this book, which is something I've been missing in my reading recently, like the feeling of wanting to stay up late and not put the book down because you love it that much. Thoroughly enjoyed this book, and I can't wait for the second one in the series, which I already have on pre-order. I think just the end section, I think we could have spaced all of that action out a little bit throughout the book, and just the end threw me off just a little bit to where it took it down from a 5 to a 4 at that part. But other than that, this book was pretty much almost perfect, and I recommend this so heavily. Next, I was craving a Christmas read, but I wanted to keep on with like that dark stalker romance theme. So I found this on my Kindle, and it is A Very Stalker Christmas. It is clearly a very short novella that I ended up purchasing after the fact, after I read it, because I enjoyed it a lot. I rated it a 2.5. It is very, very short, like I think under 100 pages. Yeah, like 97 pages. So not even 100 pages. It wasn't something that I could really rate higher than a 3 because it wasn't fully fleshed out, but for what it was really fun. Basically what we have is our main female character lives across the street from her stalker, and then this is our like main male character. There's images in the book. So Emma and Logan live across the street from each other, and Logan has been stalking Emma for like a long time. He constantly like breaks into her house and does like kind things for her, like cleaning, cooking, leave her little gifts and stuff, and she thinks that it is one of the previously homeless people that she's like kind of brought into her house. She kind of likes to take in strays a lot, animals and unhoused people, and she'll take them in and take care of them and whatever. So she thinks it's like an anonymous situation where one of those people that she's previously taken in is like taking care of her, and then one day she kind of starts talking to him, gains interest. And the only critique I really had about this book, and this is kind of a spoiler, kind of not, like you know that she's gonna find out that he's stalking her. So when she finds out that he is her stalker, she's like so willing and ready to accept it. I think in Nevessa Allen's book, there's kind of a little hesitation on both parties, and I think this one was just so willing and eager, and there was no real conflict, which makes sense because of the length of the book. There was no real conflict after that reveal, and she was just so willing and ready to accept him as like this Robin Hood of sorts that I was like, girl, you're gonna die one day because of your unwillingness to like recognize danger. And it wasn't only in this situation, it was also in like several other situations she was put in where she always like saw the good in everyone, but to a like comically concerning point. This is going to cause your death one day, girlfriend. But other than that, I would recommend this if you're looking for something of this genre. Otherwise, it's not really worth picking up, but it's short, it's easy, and if this is something that you're interested, I would say go for it. You just kind of have to laugh your way through it. We have a complete vibe switch here because next I picked up Spectacular by Stephanie Garber. This is the Christmas novella for the Caraval series. A really short 200 pages. It's pretty much like a picture book. I liked being in this world, this whimsical writing style again from Stephanie Garber, and I'm not going to tell you the plot of this because it will spoil the rest of the series for you if you're interested in reading that, but it was 3 stars. That's really it. My candle is slowly dying. I'm so sad. That's my favorite candle and I've completely burnt it. Dark Restraint by Katie Robert. This is my next read that I had. This is probably my second favorite book in the Dark Olympus series. If you're unfamiliar, I've talked about it a few times on my channel, but it's a series in which the world of Olympus is kind of like basically New York City. All the Greek mythological tales that we follow is set in that New York City environment, and it's kind of modern, rich socialites, but they all happen to be Greek mythological figures. This one follows Ariadne and the Minotaur. It's this dark, forbidden romance, and I rated it 3 stars. I think this one was just a romance in general that really drew me in. I think the problem I have with a lot of the other books in the series is I don't care about those characters for some reason, but this one really drew me in from the start. I can't tell you a ton about the plot because if you're interested in the series, it will spoil a lot for you. This is like book 9 or something. I don't know when it's gonna end. I'm interested in seeing who the next couple is going to be. I think I have an idea, but I feel like it's about time that Katie Robert wraps this world up. I really do like this illustration though. Definitely one of my favorite couples for sure. I read My December Darling by Lauren Asher. I fully annotated this book. It was really fun to read. I ended up rating this a 3 stars. It's obviously a Christmas novella. It follows Catalina and Luke. Luke lives in Lake Wisteria as a doctor, and Catalina is back as a travel nurse for her sister's wedding. They kind of have this enemies thing going on, but like, are they really enemies? No, they just like kind of have a bad perception of each other. Luke's not really an enemy at all. He kind of like is down bad for her from the beginning. Basically just kind of formed this friendship and then a relationship because of Luke's persistence, and it's just like a romance. There's not a ton going on that differentiates it from a lot of other romances I've read. Christmas vibes, I say maybe like a 6.5 out of 10, very low on the Christmas vibe scale. One of the main redeeming things about this book to me was how much I related to Catalina. Everything she said about her family, about herself, about her relationships, about her personality, her guardedness, I was like, that is so me. How does Lauren Asher know that? If this had been a fully fleshed out novel, I could have seen it being 5 stars just because of that relatability factor. But as for Luke, I really enjoyed his love languages. It was like a combination of physical touch and acts of service. And I think that's probably the closest to what I like to receive as a love language. So that was really cool to see. I think just my main complaint about this was how short it was, which obviously it's supposed to be short. That's the point of a novella. If this had been longer, I would have been so attached to these characters. It probably would have destroyed me. So maybe it was good that it was a novella, but that's kind of all I have to say about this one as well. A lot of novellas this month for some reason, and the cover is just adorable. Probably one of my favorite covers of the month, honestly. So cute. Okay, my review for this one that I wrote is literally like 3 words. I wrote goofy and sexy plus Christmas corn emoji. And that really sums this book up. A Holly Jolly Ever After by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I read the first book in this interconnected standalone series last December. Our main character's name is Winnie. If you picture the Hallmark Channel, she's like a very pure Christian, like Hallmark actor that has a very big reputation to uphold, and she's recently gone through a scandal that has kind of taken her down in the dumps in her reputation. Everyone's really criticizing her and her reputation at the moment, and she thinks her career is over until she gets approached by a talent agent. It's called the Hope Channel, their version of the Hallmark Channel. She gets approached by this talent agent to be in a Hope After Dark movie. It's kind of a new installment to the Hope Channel where it's like Hope movies, but sexy, and there's like sex in them. So she's like, why would I do this? My reputation's already terrible. Why would I just add to it? But she eventually decides she's gonna do the movie. She needs the money. She's kind of over being this like standard for purity because she really doesn't like purity culture, and she's had a lot of religious trauma from her upbringing and has kind of fallen out of that religiousness a little bit. She decides to do this movie, and her co-star is Callum, who is a former member of this boy band. He now owns a pizza chain. He kind of needs a reputation boost, so they put him in this movie, and they obviously clearly fall in love. He has to help her kind of learn how to be sexy and learn how to have sex on screen because she's never had an O before in her life, and she has to act like she is having one several times in this movie. So it's kind of the plot point of like teaching her about sex, and it's like goofy and clearly like just for the sake of having smut in this book. But I gave it a 3.5 stars. I didn't really connect to the characters specifically. I really liked the aspect of the religious trauma in this book. It was interestingly discussed, and I think it was well done in my opinion, although I don't have like heavy experience with it, so someone who does maybe might have a different opinion on that. I think the reason why it got an almost 4 is because of how often this book made me laugh out loud. Like some of the lines and the things that the characters would say in this book, I was like, that was a really funny joke. These authors should be stand-up comedians with how funny that this book was, but like the characters themselves didn't really connect to me, but I was just laughing and having a good jolly time. Christmas vibes, I'd say like a 7 out of 10, pretty high on the Christmas vibe scale. I would definitely recommend this if you're interested. I think the only critique I have is it was way too long. It's almost 400 pages. I think we could have cut this down to like 250, 300 and still had a really solid book. But I would probably read whatever installment they come out in the future for with this series. All of those words felt jumbled and were probably incorrect, but I'm not going to try and correct myself because I'm about done filming. I've been doing this for 45 minutes and I'm over it. So these were all the books I read in December. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a good reading month in December. I definitely had a fun time after reviewing and looking back at all of these books. I had a better time than I thought in my head that I did. I don't know. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye.